Welcome to the shadows of history. Dim your lights, find your comfort, and let the flickering candle guide your mind back to the strange Middle Ages. Tonight, we journey through the bizarre world of medieval vanity, where fashion was a battlefield of status and personal hygiene was merely a secondary suggestion for many. Listen to the gentle hum of the air around you. Breathe deeply as we peel back the layers of time to reveal the eccentricities of our ancestors. Forget the bloody battles and grand conquests for a moment. Instead, let us look at how the elite chose to present their bodies to the world. In this era, your clothes were your identity, your rank, and your voice. It was a time when looking ridiculous was often the price of high power. Imagine living in a world where the fabric on your back told everyone exactly who you were and how much gold was stored in your vaults. While bathing was often considered an optional luxury, the way one dressed was a life or death matter of social standing and extreme aristocratic pride for the elite. We will explore the trends that seem impossible to us now, but with a height of sophistication in a world ruled by kings and very strange omens. Every thread, every button, and every extra inch of leather served a purpose in the grand theatre of medieval life and the display of vast wealth. They say beauty is pain, but in the Middle Ages, beauty was often a logistical nightmare designed to keep the lower classes firmly in their humble places. Relax your shoulders and let the weight of the modern world fall away. We're travelling back hundreds of years into the heart of human vanity. The smells of wood smoke and old wool fill the air of our imagination. We are guests at a court where fashion is the most powerful weapon. Every stitch tells a story of an artisan's labour and a noble's desire to be seen as something more than just a mere mortal on earth. In the quiet of the night, we can almost hear the rustle of silk and the heavy clatter of boots on the cold, hard palace floors. There is a strange comfort in knowing that humans have always been obsessed with their appearance, no matter how impractical the trends may have actually been. As we prepare to see the first trend, take a slow breath. Let the history wash over you like a calm, cool tide in the dark. The world was much smaller then, and fashion was one of the few ways to truly stand out in a crowd of grey and brown peasants. To wear certain colours or fabrics was to claim a piece of the divine, a right reserved only for those born into the highest of circles. Follow me now as we step onto the cold stone floors of the royal court to witness the first of our many strange fashion wonders tonight. We are unlocking the wardrobe of the past, revealing secrets that have been tucked away in cedar chests for over 500 long and weary years. Time is a fluid thing in this space. Let the minutes stretch as we delve into the first oddity of the medieval European aristocratic fashion scene. Money and power often manifest in the most inconvenient ways. Our first stop involves the very feet of the wealthy and their peculiar choice of footwear. Are you ready to see how the lengths people went to for status could literally trip them up? Let us look at the infamous and long poulain. Imagine walking in shoes twice the length of your feet. These are poulains, the ultimate status symbol of the 14th century, where length truly mattered most. Poulains were not designed for running or working. They were designed to announce to the world that you were far too wealthy for any manual labour. To keep these long points from flopping around, they were often stuffed with moss, wool, or even whalebone to maintain their proud and quite ridiculous silhouette. Walking became an art form, or rather, a chore. One had to lift their feet high and step carefully to avoid tripping over their own vast ego. In extreme cases, the tips were tied to the knees with thin silver chains, allowing the wearer to move without constantly stumbling over their expensive footwear. These chains were often jewel-encrusted, adding yet another layer of wealth to a garment that was already functionally useless in almost every practical way possible. The church, of course, was not amused. They called these shoes the devil's fingers, claiming they were an affront to God and a sign of vanity. Despite the holy warnings, the trend only grew longer. It seemed the more the church complained, the more the nobility wanted to stretch their toes out. Eventually, laws were passed to regulate the length of the points based on social rank. Only kings could wear the longest and most impractical of points. A common man might have a point of 6 inches, while a knight could have 12, and a high-ranking duke could go even further than that. It was a literal measurement of power. To have the longest shoes was to be at the very top of the hierarchy, untouchable and quite literally elevated. The irony was that the more power you had, the more likely you were to fall flat on your face in front of your royal peers. Can you imagine these shoes on a rainy day in London? The long points would act like sponges, soaking up the sewage and mud of the streets. Even the most expensive fabrics were no match for the reality of medieval life. Yet the trend persisted for over a century of high fashion. In the grand halls, the sight must have been incredible. A sea of pointed toes clacking against the stone, each one a testament to human vanity's reach. The craftsmen who made these shoes were highly specialized, ensuring that each pair was a unique masterpiece of leatherwork and embroidery for their wealthy clients. Colours were just as important as length. A deep blue indicated royal connections, while gold thread showed off a family's immense and ancient wealth. Even after they went out of style, these shoes remained a symbol of an era that valued appearance far more than any sense of practical utility. Even the warriors could not escape it. Metal armour was forged with long points, making it nearly impossible to walk on foot during a chaotic battle. It was a time when the aesthetic of the knight was more important than his ability to actually fight effectively on the muddy ground of combat. Women, too, adopted the trend, though their shoes were often hidden beneath long, heavy skirts, only peeking out as they walked through the palace halls. The dinner table was a prime location for shoe spotting. A quick glance at the floor would tell you exactly who was the most important guest there. Doctors of the time noted the deformities these shoes caused. Bunions and crushed toes were the silent price paid for the glory of a pointed foot. But who cared about healthy feet when you looked like a god? Fashion has always demanded sacrifices, and the medieval period was no different in that. If a fire broke out or an enemy attacked, these shoes were a death sentence. You could not run. You could only shuffle away with great dignity. By the end of the 15th century, the trend finally died out, replaced by a new obsession that moved from the feet to the very face. As we leave the feet behind, we turn our gaze upward to the head, where a different kind of extreme modification was taking place for women. In the Middle Ages, a high forehead was the ultimate sign of beauty, intelligence, and a noble soul. But getting it was anything but peaceful. Women would spend hours plucking their hair, one by one, to move their hairline back several inches, creating a vast and smooth expanse of skin. The goal was to look like a hairless, innocent infant, a look that was believed to represent purity and a closeness to the divine or the angels. To enhance the effect, they used caustic creams made of vinegar and lime to stop the hair from growing back, often burning their delicate skin. Eyebrows were also removed. A bare face was a canvas of status, showing that you had the time and servants to maintain such a difficult look. In these portraits, the women look like alien beings to our modern eyes, but in their time, they were the peak of feminine grace and allure. Eyelashes were sometimes plucked as well, creating a look that was completely devoid of any natural framing, focusing all attention on the smooth, pale skin. The highbrow look we talk about today has its literal roots in this painful practice. It was a sign of a mind dedicated to higher things. The process was a bonding ritual of sorts, a shared experience of pain and patience that defined the daily lives of noble women across the entire continent. Every detail was managed. If a hair dared to grow back, it was dealt with immediately. There was no room for natural imperfection in the royal court. To emphasize the forehead even more, they wore towering hats that pulled the skin tight, further accentuating the length of their face and their high status. The hennin was a feat of engineering, made of wire and fine silk, often trailing a long, transparent veil that floated behind the woman like a cloud. The veil added a sense of mystery and ethereal beauty, making the woman appear as if she were floating through the halls of the castle like a ghost. Seen from a distance, these women looked like a different species, a race of giants with elongated heads and shimmering trailing wings of silk and fine lace. The weight of these hats caused headaches and neck pain, but such was the price of being the most fashionable person in the room at court. Critics of the time mocked the look, comparing the women to plucked chickens or strange, hairless animals that had wandered into the royal palace by mistake. But the trend was powerful. It lasted for decades, becoming more extreme with each passing year as women sought to outdo each other in forehead height. Makeup was used to further enhance the look, with lead-based powders creating a ghostly pallor that was believed to be the ultimate sign of aristocratic health. A small, red mouth and a vast white forehead. This was the face of the late Middle Ages, a mask of beauty that hid a world of pain. When the sun set, the mask came off, revealing the physical toll of the day's vanity. The relief must have been as immense as the forehead itself. For a time, the brush was a forgotten tool for the front of the head, as the hairline retreated further and further into the past of history. Even architecture seemed to reflect the fashion of the time, with everything reaching upward toward the heavens in a desperate and grand display of status and faith. But men were not to be outdone in the realm of strange fashion. We move now from the face to a much more central area of interest. Enter the codpiece. It started as a simple necessity, a way to join two separate trouser legs together while maintaining a modicum of personal, private decency. Initially, it was just a practical solution to the problem of short tunics and tight leggings, ensuring that nothing was exposed during a person's daily activities. But soon, men realized that this flap could be used for more than just coverage. It could be used to make a very bold and loud statement. By the 16th century, the codpiece had become a padded, decorative, and often enormous feature of male attire, designed to emphasize the wearer's masculine power. They were threaded like works of art. Tailors used silk, satin, and jewels to turn a simple flap into a centerpiece of the entire male royal wardrobe. They were also surprisingly practical. Men used them as pockets, storing handkerchiefs, small coins, or even pieces of fruit inside the large, padded, and hollow space. It was a pocket that no thief would dare to pick, making it the safest place in the Middle Ages to keep one's most precious and small valuables. Henry VIII was the king of the codpiece. His were legendary, designed to project an image of absolute strength, virility, and undeniable, massive royal authority over England. Even on the battlefield, the codpiece remained. Armoured versions were forged from steel, ensuring that the knight's silhouette remained impressively masculine even in the heat of war. The blacksmith's skill was tested in creating these pieces, which had to be both protective and aesthetically pleasing to the knight who would wear them in battle. In a social setting, the codpiece was a source of pride and competition. Whose was the largest? Whose was the most decorated with fine jewels and rare silks? Some were even designed with faces or strange patterns, adding a touch of humour or even intimidation to the wearer's most personal and private of garments. The ladies of the court undoubtedly had much to say about this trend, which left very little to the imagination and everything to the tailor's creative skill. But like all trends, it eventually reached a point of absurdity. By the end of the 16th century, they were so large they became a hindrance. Sitting down, eating, or even just walking through a doorway became a challenge. The codpiece had grown too large for the world it lived in comfortably. Eventually, they began to shrink, replaced by more modest and practical fashions as the era of the Tudors gave way to a much more sober aesthetic. The codpiece remains one of history's most blatant displays of male insecurity and the desire to project power through the most literal of means possible. But while men focused on their centres, women were extending their reach. Let us look at the skirts that literally swept the streets of Europe's cities. Fabric was the currency of fashion. The longer your train, the more money you had to literally waste on the dirty, unpaved ground of the city. These trains were called dastardly tales by the church, who claimed they were a tool of the devil to trip up the righteous and the pure, to the moralists, a woman dragging her wealth through the mud was a sign of ultimate vanity and a disregard for the suffering of the poor. One single train could have provided clothing for an entire village, yet it was used to sweep the dust of a palace or a muddy street. The work of cleaning these garments was endless. Servants spent hours removing the evidence of a single walk, often failing to fully restore the delicate fabric. Every tear was a minor disaster, every stain a blow to the owner's pride. Yet, they continued to wear them, dragging their status behind them always. The weight of these dresses was immense. A woman could be carrying 30 pounds of fabric, making every step a feat of strength and quiet endurance. Despite the weight, the movement was considered beautiful. The way the fabric flowed and settled was a key part of a woman's courtly and elegant presence. Laws were created to stop commoners from imitating the rich. If you weren't a noble, wearing a train or even velvet could land you in deep trouble. Fashion was a legal matter. Your clothes were a contract with society, and breaking that contract was a serious offence against the established social order of things. Purple was the colour of kings. To wear it without permission was an act of treason, a claim to a throne that you did not possess. The wardrobe was a map of power. A single glance could tell you exactly where a person stood in the hierarchy of the kingdom and court. Ermine fur was another sign of high status. The more spots you had, the more royal blood flowed through your veins, or so people believed. When she sat, she occupied more space than anyone else. It was a physical way of saying, I am here, and I am more important than you. The architecture of the Middle Ages was often at odds with its fashion. Narrow halls and steep stairs were a nightmare for the fashionable noblewoman. The sound of tearing silk was the sound of money disappearing. It was a constant risk, but one that every noblewoman was willing to take for style. Pearls, gold thread, and jewels were added to the skirts, making them even heavier and more valuable, turning a person into a walking, living treasure chest. In the moonlight, the fashion of the Middle Ages took on a ghostly quality, a shimmering reminder of the transience of wealth and the permanence of vanity. But where did these colours come from? The world of medieval dyes was a place of strange ingredients and often very dangerous chemical reactions. Dyers were the alchemists of fashion. They used everything from crushed bugs to fermented urine to create the vibrant colours that the nobility demanded so much. The perfect red came from insects. Thousands of them had to be crushed to dye a single cloak, making the colour as expensive as a small house. Yellow was often made from saffron or weld, but the most vibrant yellows were sometimes achieved using toxic chemicals that would slowly poison the workers. Fashion had a hidden cost. The people who made the colours often lived short, sickly lives, sacrificed for the sake of a beautiful, bright new gown. Some greens were made with arsenic. Wearing such a colour could cause skin rashes and illness, a literal killer look that was very popular in royal court. The nobility didn't know their clothes were poisoning them. They only saw the beauty of the colour and the envy it inspired in their many rivals. The dye house was a place of mystery and stinking smells, where the raw materials of nature were transformed into the symbols of highest human status. Fastness of colour was a sign of quality. A dress that faded in the sun was a dress that was not worthy of a truly noble person. To see such colours in a world that was otherwise brown and grey must have been like seeing a vision of a magical, distant and colourful world. The psychology of colour was powerful. Blue was for the Virgin Mary, red was for the Passion of Christ, and green was for the newness of spring. Every shade had a meaning, every tint a story. In the Middle Ages, you didn't just wear a colour, you wore a whole system of religious beliefs. As we begin to wrap up our journey, let the vibrant colours of the past fade into the soft, quiet greys of your own peaceful and calm room. We have seen the long toes, the high foreheads, the stuffed codpieces, and the trailing skirts of an era that was as strange as it was beautiful. These trends tell us that humans have always used their bodies as a canvas for their dreams, their fears, and their endless, undying desire for social recognition. We might laugh at the poulain or the plucked foreheads, but what will people 500 years from now think of our own modern fashion choices today? Will they wonder why we wore plastic shoes or dyed our hair in neon colours? Every era has its own brand of beautiful and its own brand of absurdity. The mirror of fashion is always changing, reflecting the spirit of the age and the hearts of the people who live within it so briefly and loudly. Now, it is time to let these stories rest. The Middle Ages are far away, and your own bed is warm, safe, and perfectly comfortable for sleep. Let your mind drift back from the castles and the courts. The wind outside is just a whisper, and the night is yours to enjoy completely. Breathe slowly. Feel the weight of your blankets. You're safe in the modern world, where shoes are for walking and foreheads are just for foreheads. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the weird and wonderful past. May your dreams be filled with beautiful colours and peaceful, quiet landscapes. Good night. May you wake up refreshed, far away from the mud of medieval streets and the pain of 1,000 plucked hairs on a noble's head. Rest now. The history books are closed, and the candles are all out. Sleep well, and let the silence of the ages wrap around you. Deep sleep is coming. Your journey is done. The strange fashions of the past are now just echoes in the vast chamber of your resting mind. Peace, quiet, stillness. Let every muscle relax as you descend into the world of dreams where everything is simple, soft, and very kind to you. Good night, dear traveller of time. Your bed is your palace, and your dreams are your own royal court. Sleep deeply and wake in the light. Fabric was a precious commodity, and there was no better way to show wealth than by dragging yards of it through the filthy, unpaved streets of Europe. Every tear was a statement of waste. Only the truly elite could afford to destroy such beautiful work in a single afternoon of walking through town. The juxtaposition of extreme luxury and everyday filth was the defining characteristic of the medieval experience. One's dress was a shield against the common reality. Behind every beautiful gown was a team of servants working through the night to ensure their mistress looked perfect for the next morning's royal court assembly. The logistics of fashion were immense. Maintaining these garments required a specialized knowledge of fabrics, stains, and the delicate art of preservation in damp castles. Underneath the long skirts, the body was also being shaped. Layers of linen and wool provided the structure for the heavy outer garments to hang correctly. Freedom of movement was not the goal. Grace was found in a certain stiffness, a controlled elegance that spoke of a life of leisure and discipline. Accessories were the finishing touch. Gloves, belts, and purses were all designed to match the dress, creating a unified and very expensive look for the noblewoman. Men's fashion was no less dramatic. Cloaks were lined with expensive furs and weighed down with heavy embroidery that shimmered in the afternoon sun of the garden. Fur was a vital part of the medieval wardrobe, providing warmth in cold stone palaces and serving as a clear indicator of one's wealth and status. The fur trade was global even then. Rare pelts from the north were brought to the courts of Europe to satisfy the endless hunger for luxury. Even small details like ribbons were expensive. A single yard of fine silk could cost a commoner a month's wages, yet the nobility used them lavishly. Entering a room was a performance. The sound of the fabric, the flash of jewels, and the long trail of the dress were all part of the act. Jewellery was not just for show, it was often a way to carry one's wealth. In times of trouble, a brooch could be traded for a horse. At a feast, your place at the table was determined by your dress as much as your title. The most fashionable sat closest to the king. Even eating was a challenge. Long sleeves had to be carefully managed to avoid dipping into the gravy, adding another layer of complexity to social life. Hygiene was a ritual. After the meal, hands were washed in scented water, a small moment of cleanliness in an otherwise very dusty and dirty world. The designs on the clothes often told stories, scenes of hunting, courtly love, or religious parables were stitched into the very fabric of the garments themselves. The labour was invisible, but the result was spectacular. Months of work went into a single outfit that might only be worn a handful of times. Fashion was a language of signals. A closed fan, a dropped handkerchief, or a specific colour could all convey messages that were understood by the court. Every movement was choreographed. To bow in such heavy clothes required practice and a deep understanding of the weight and balance of one's own wardrobe. While the polaines were for show, practical boots were also a necessity for travel. Even then, they were often decorated with small, subtle stamps and patterns. Travel fashion was about survival. Thick wool and heavy leather protected the wearer from the rain, wind, and the inevitable cold of the open road. Even in the most practical clothes, there was room for a bit of vanity. A beautiful clasp was a small reminder of one's status on the road. The contrast between the noble and the peasant was absolute. One lived in a world of colour and silk, the other in a world of brown wool. This was the reality for the majority of the population. Their clothes were functional, durable, and completely devoid of the strange trends of the ruling class. Every piece of clothing was made by hand, from the shearing of the sheep to the weaving of the cloth. It was a life of constant labour. There were no poulain here. A shoe was a precious tool for work, to be kept and repaired for as long as it could possibly hold together. Even in their simple lives, there was a desire for beauty. A few bright ribbons or a clean apron were enough to mark a special day. Nature provided the only colours many people would ever see. The brilliant dyes of the nobility were as distant as the stars in the night sky. The gap between the two worlds was unbridgeable, a chasm of fabric, colour, and status that defined the entire medieval social and political structure. At the centre of it all was the king, the ultimate arbiter of taste and the person for whom all these strange trends were ultimately created for. In this room, the strange became the standard. The most ridiculous shoe or the tallest hat was a sign of the most profound loyalty to the crown. To be in the presence of the king was to be in the presence of God's chosen representative on earth, and you had to dress the part. The sound of the horn announced the arrival of the elite, a signal for everyone to look and be amazed by the display of wealth and power. Every law, every decree, and every trend started with a stroke of a pen, a decision made by someone who never had to worry about mud. And so we return to the colours and the chemistry. The beauty of the Middle Ages was always built on a foundation of hard work and danger. Colours were not just about aesthetics, they were products of dangerous chemistry. Vibrant dyes often contained heavy metals that could slowly poison the wearer for beauty's sake. The quest for the perfect blue led to the use of rare minerals like lapis lazuli, which had to be ground into a fine, precious, and expensive powder. This was the most expensive pigment in the world, worth more than gold. To wear a dress of this colour was to wear a literal small fortune. The nobility would settle for nothing less. If it was rare and dangerous, it was desirable. The more difficult it was to create, the better it was. The knowledge of these dyes was a closely guarded secret, passed down from master to apprentice in a guild that ruled the world of medieval colour. To steal a recipe was a crime. The colours of the nobility were their intellectual property, a way to maintain their exclusive and very visual identity. In the winter, colour was even more important. It was a sign of life and heat in a world that was frozen and dead for many months. Fashion had to be functional in the winter. The heavy wool and thick furs were not just for show. They were the only thing between life and death. Indoors, the fashion changed again. Lighter fabrics could be worn near the fire, but the threat of a draught was always present in the large stone halls. Even with the best clothes, staying warm was a constant struggle. Small, portable heaters were a common accessory for the wealthy women of the medieval court. The image of the glamorous noble is often one of comfort, but the reality was often one of shivering in a very beautiful and very expensive cloak. Velvet was the king of fabrics. Its complex weave required a special loom and a level of skill that few weavers possessed in the Middle Ages. The sound of the loom was the heartbeat of the textile industry. It was a sound that meant wealth for the merchant and status for the final buyer. Gold was literally woven into the clothes. It was a way to make the person appear divine, as if they were made of light and precious metal themselves. The stiffness of the clothes was a sign of their value. A dress that could stand on its own was a dress that was worth a small fortune. Comfort was never the priority. The goal was to look as impressive and as unapproachable as possible to the common people who watched from a distance. The end of the Middle Ages brought a change in fashion, but the obsession with status remained as strong as it had ever been in human history. Time moves on and trends fade, but the human heart remains the same. We still want to be seen, to be valued, and to be considered beautiful. We have replaced the crush bugs with synthetic chemicals, but our desire for the perfect red or the most brilliant blue is still just as strong. Fashion is faster now, but the game is the same. We still use our clothes to tell the world who we are and what we want to be. The past is never truly gone. It lives on in our traditions, our language, and the way we think about beauty and the human body and society. A small piece of the past, lost in the present. We are all connected to those who came before us, even in our most ridiculous fashion choices. To touch the past is to realize how fragile it is. The silk and the velvet are fading, but the stories they tell are as vibrant as ever. We look at these things from behind a glass wall, safe from the mud and the toxic dyes, but we are still drawn to their strange, haunting beauty. The journey is almost over. The world of the Middle Ages is closing its doors, leaving us back in the comfort of our own modern and simple lives. No more poulains, no more tripping over silk trains. We have traded status for comfort, and for that, we can all be very truly thankful tonight. The same moon that watched the knights and the queens now watches over you. It is a silent witness to the long, strange history of human vanity. The day is done, and the history lesson is over. It is time to let your own story continue in the quiet world of your own dreams. A final breath, a final thought. The past is a dream, and the dream is a part of you now, tucked away for the long night ahead. As the stars watch over the world, let them watch over your sleep. The Middle Ages are gone, and you are here, safe and very sound. As our journey ends, the candle burns low. We look back at these oddities with a smile, yet we must wonder how future generations will judge us. Every drip of time takes us further from the medieval world, yet we carry its echoes in our own pursuit of beauty and social status today. The desire to be taller, more prominent, and more impressive has never really left us. We just find new ways to express the same old human needs. The chapters on poulains and codpieces are finished for tonight. We have turned the pages of vanity and found ourselves reflected in the very same mirror. In the quiet of your room, these stories become part of the atmosphere, a gentle reminder that our ancestors were just as human as we are. The weight of the day is lifting, replaced by the light and airy fabric of your own imagination. You're drifting away from the historical stone walls. The forest of the past is now just the softness of your covers. The world is small, warm, and perfectly safe for a long, deep sleep tonight. The library of history is closing its doors, the librarian has gone home, and the secrets of the Middle Ages are tucked away in the dark. One single light in the vast darkness. Let your mind focus on that small, steady point as you leave the noise of the past behind you. Your toes are free, no points, no chains, no mud, just the simple comfort of being exactly as you are in this very moment of rest. The rhythm of the wind is the rhythm of your breath, in and out, slow and steady. You are part of the night's calm and quiet cycle. Even the ghosts of the past seem to be at peace now. The vanity has been washed away by time, leaving only the human soul behind it. The river of time flows on, carrying the trends and the people of the past away to a place where they can finally be at rest. You're like that leaf, drifting on the surface of sleep, carried by a gentle tide toward the world of dreams where everything is possible and soft. The world is asleep. The birds are quiet in the trees, and the stones of the old castle are cool and silent under the winter moon. Wrap yourself in the darkness. It is not cold. It is a warm, protective cloak that hides you from the worries and the noise of today. Swing and stay. Swing and rest. Your heart is finding its natural slow rhythm for the night. You're ready to let go completely now. You have travelled through centuries in 30 minutes. It is a long way, but you're home now, and the journey has come to its end. The true royalty is the peace of your own mind. The true treasure is the sleep that is coming to claim you with its soft, dark hands. Close your eyes. Let the last of the images fade. There is nothing left to see, nothing left to do, but simply be in the quiet. Good night, sweet dreamer. The Middle Ages are a story told, and the modern world is a thought put aside for the morning's bright, new light. Let these tales of vanity and history carry you into a deep, peaceful sleep. The past is a dream. Good night, and may your rest be long.